All right, we're addressing takedown defense through Kata application, right? So first things first, let's say Gabe's trying to tackle me here. All I'm gonna do is put my hands out in front of me like this and bring my hips back. The biggest thing when someone's trying to take you down is do not let them connect to your hips. Once he's able to connect to my hips, he's gonna be able to pick me up. Just imagine you're trying to pick up a big box, right? If you're lifting the box from here, you're picking it up with your back, and it's really hard to do. So you kind of have to squat yourself next to the box, pick it up tight, hug it close to your chest. So that's what he needs to do to be able to take me down. Anytime there's space between his head and my hip, or his hip and my hip, there's an opportunity for me to escape and create more space. So first things first, easiest thing right off the bat, he's trying to tackle me here. All I'm gonna do is frame. And there's two places you can frame. You could frame around the shoulder, neck area, or you could frame the head itself. The only problem with the head itself is he can move that frame out of the way pretty easily and slip through and still be able to get to here. So one thing to consider is maybe frame the shoulder and the head at the same time, right? So he goes through and I'm going here and I'm frame. Now, you also have different frames that you can frame with. So the furthest thing away from you is your hands, and it kind of makes sense. If he gets past your hands, he goes forward. I got to frame with my forearms here. So notice how I personally like to have something controlling the head because that allows me to steer him. And then this one's kind of like I'm doing a plank on the floor where this structure here is holding me away from him, and it's my skeletal system that's keeping him away rather than me trying to push against him here. So if he pushes into me here, it's kind of like my frame that's leaning into him. Notice as well, my hips are back, and if you can see, my heels are kind of raised because I'm actually leaning into him. He's holding me up. I'm not trying to be here trying to hold him up, kind of maintaining a balanced 50-50 weight distribution. I'm really trying my best to kind of make him carry my weight. And that's going to slow down his forward momentum, right? So once you create that frame, that means you're able to throw either some knees or push the guy out of the way and move with your footwork to get out of the way. So Gabe's crashing in here, I frame one. Notice how one leg is back, one leg is forward, just like your front stance. That allows me to throw that back knee pretty easily. If he starts grabbing for this one, I can switch my knees and go in again. Notice how when I do throw my knees, I'm landing forward because I want, again, to lean into him as I do that. I'm not trying to throw knees out here with my back arch like that because he could continue his momentum and I'm just gonna fall backwards. So now, let's say he got past my frames and I wasn't able to preempt his attack, and he's able to start making contact with his shoulder and my hip here. So he's gonna do that here. I'm like, oh crap, and I get to this, right? Guys, notice, a lot of karate instructors teach this, throwing elbows to the back of the head here. Notice what happens to my posture when I lift up to throw this elbow like this. I start arching back and I'm actually going here. If I don't have a solid frame against this forward momentum, let's say I hold him here, now Gabe push forward, I'm gonna fall back. And you see this so many times in street fights, in fights that you see on YouTube and through your research viewing that you see in face-to-face. People think that they can strike when he's connected to their hip. There's no way you can do that until you have a solid base underneath you. So if I get to here and continue your momentum, go, 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 I'm gonna fall down, he's gonna land on top of me, I'm gonna hit the back of my head onto the pavement, he's gonna be there and he's gonna start pounding on top of me with his strikes and stuff, right? So wait and make sure you have a solid base underneath you. So first things first, he's connecting his shoulders to my hip here. I need to maintain that sprawled position. My chest makes contact with his shoulder here. And now let's switch, put your hand on this side. My arm actually goes over his arm like this. The reason for that is his posture is bent over, and that's why he's able to kind of like push me like a sled, like you're pushing a car. If I raise his posture up, he's not gonna be able to push as much. He's actually gonna start pushing this way, or from here, he's gonna start pushing that way. So he has the best height with me right here when his shoulder's attached to my hip. So as he pushes forward and I don't do anything against that, he's still gonna be able to push me down. So my arm on the same side as the shoulder that has contact with me, the opposite side of the one that's where the head's pointing, it's gonna lift up on the shoulder and I'm gonna turn and face my body towards where his head is facing. So he goes in with the crash, I lift up, and look, I'm pulling his center of gravity up so that he has less contact with my hip here, and I'm turning my body to face the same direction as his head. So imagine I'm facing square, then I turn this way. If his head went this way here, and you go past my frame, immediately overhook, turn, and that's gonna allow me to redirect his energy away from me here. Now, you can go right back to what you're comfortable with which is for most karate guys, is to strike. So once you're able to redirect that energy, lift up, put that frame there again so that he cannot turn back into you. So what I mean by that is I'm here, I redirected that energy. If he wants to turn back into me, his head's gonna go here and it's gonna square up with me again. So you have a free arm already. Push this head away. You can use that as an elbow to push the head away, but maintain this frame just like we did in step 1. But now you're kind of shoulder to armpit with this frame here. And look, there's your back knee, there's your front knee. You can throw elbows like this. But now you can try to throw top-down elbows. It's a little safer. I still like elbows that go forward because it keeps his structure away from me here. If I let go of this and his head's turning into me here, he can still turn into me, square with me, and take me back to the floor. So you always have to keep that in mind. So there's that. So now, him knowing this, he only has 2 options once he makes contact with my hip. It's either I pull him up so he has to come up, or if he feels like I'm pulling him up, he's gonna go down and try to bring my knees together and take me to the floor. It's kind of like, imagine like a rope going around the ankles and making somebody trip over like that. So when he makes contact with my hip here and he feels like I'm trying to pull him up, he's gonna go down and do that, yes. In that case, I need to make sure my feet are back so that he cannot wrap my legs together. So even if he does wrap his arms here around my thighs like that, notice how my feet are still sprawling into him. So push forward, I can still sprawl in like this. My leg can articulate at my knees still. So I can still be heavy, my chest is on his back, drive, and I can still maintain this here. If I don't do that, drive, he's gonna take me back and I'm gonna be heavy on my heels and it's gonna take my heels back to the mat. So, first things first, you always address the forward momentum and try not to be square with it, because a guy going forward versus you trying to be square with it and push against it, the forward pressure is always gonna take you back. 2, get your hips away from his hips so that you can sprawl, and that prevents his forward momentum from connecting to you and taking you back. If he goes down and grabs your legs together, make sure whatever is left to articulate, right here, it's your foot, your knee hinge, is still gonna be able to sprawl, and you're gonna bring your hips towards into him here. Now, once that happens, my arm is actually gonna, again, create a structure to keep his head disconnected from my hip. Because step 1, he goes here, he goes down to my legs, wraps my legs. This can only buy me some time, right? I'm staying heavy, he cannot drive forward anymore, but if he's strong enough, he's gonna connect his head to mine, lift me up off the ground. So my arm here, the one that's on the same side of the head, is gonna push the head away. I can even assist my own hand and grab it, and I'm gonna peel his head off from my body, create distance, you throw your knee if you want. There's takedowns from there too, right? So again, I'm here, he goes down. I wanted this one to lift him up. He goes down, wraps my legs together, and like last effort, I need to shove my hand here, disconnect his head from my hip, and from here I'm gonna grab over the top, palm to palm, and from here I can even twist his head into the mat. So I'm gonna twist you back this way, and I'm gonna lift you up like that. You guys can imagine if I continue that motion here, that's gonna kind of spiral him to the mat here. And I'm really not stepping back to do that. I'm actually making him twist in place so he's gonna land on top of right dead center on me here. Now, if you take the person away and look at the movements I'm doing, first things first, I'm going here, happens a lot in Kusanku, going here, throwing the knee, which happens a lot in a lot of our katas. If he makes contact and I have to put my arm under his armpit or over his armpit and I turn, that happens in the Pinan katas a lot too. If I start sprawling and I get to here, these are all your Sanshin type katas, and I'm actually having that Nahanchi hourglass stance too when I do that. I also have this motion here going across. You see a lot in the Goju katas as well, even reaching over the top, bringing across like that. Another thing you can do is shove the head down and lift that arm up. So let's say he goes in, going for the tackle, head on one side, and now let's say instead of me lifting the head up, let's say it's way too tight to me now, I sprawled and I can't do anything, at least I can push this down and I can start lifting this up. So I'm actually gonna spiral him this way and I'm gonna shove like that. That's gonna allow me to turn and break the grip. I can even dig for this underhook here and shove and turn as well. So this motion here in katas, this motion here in katas, that big spiraling motion, right? So let's say he goes here and I get this underhook now. Rather than going over the top, I'm pushing the head down and I can shove this way and turn him. You can imagine how that makes him spiral. We're not gonna do it on this hard surface, but you guys kind of imagine that, right? So again, frame, go back to what's comfortable for you. Frame, keep your hips away, throw that knee. If he engages in you, makes contact, figure out a way to create space again. Those cross faces, the underhook, that way you go throw your knee again. If you opt to strike from over the top, make sure your hips are not compromised. Make sure you're sprawled into the person so that you can throw elbows like that. Make sure you're not squared with him because a forward pressure in a squared position is always going to take you back, right? So if we, let's see, if you're here and you go, hopefully this gets caught on camera, so you tackle here. If I get to this, his head's on this side, I can cross face and bring him back up. If he gets too strong and starts pushing, I'm gonna go with him and redirect him that way. If he goes the other way, same thing, I'm cross facing here to bring him back up, or I need to redirect here. I can throw strikes this way too, if I need to, and I throw that knee as well. So, cool.